Hey, and we're live. Psych. And we are live. Jamal here with Creator, and today we have the awesome Sarah Kehoe here to talk about finding our visual style when it comes to fashion, lifestyle, photography. Sarah, if you could give us a quick intro about yourself, and then we'll start this conversation.
Okay. I'm a photographer, and I've been shooting for a long time, probably 20 years. And I do lifestyle and fashion, and I really kind of focus on very authentic, organic, as real as possible moments. And I shoot a mix of commercial and editorial work, and that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And give us a quick background and agenda, if you will, of what you're going to be covering today.
Okay.
And then you could proceed to jump in.
Just a quick question. Should I be looking here?
You can just look
Okay. Okay, so
Live streaming
we
with
have
you, everybody.
there's like we have like a circle of people,
Yeah, it's hard to see everything.
so yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk to you guys. So I really wanted to talk about something that interests me a lot, because it's something I continue to work on and think about a lot and constantly try to improve myself. And it's really about, making authentic and strong choices in your photography, and being as bold as possible and as true to your own vision as possible. And I know that when I first started, it was a lot about like, oh my God, I need to find my style. I need to find my style. But like, how do you find your style? Like, and how to kind of get that moving in the right direction without trying to control it completely. So that will be the gist of the idea.
Cool. And so also really quickly, give us a sense before we kick things off of what your trajectory was like of finding your style, or is that a part of the convo?
No, it's not really, but I think, for me, it was a really interesting route because I studied photojournalism. I worked in photojournalism for a long time, and I always assumed that would be what I would do. And I worked at a magazine for about 5 years as a photo editor, and we worked on such heavy stories, and it was amazing, and it felt incredible to do such meaningful work. But then when it came time to shoot, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to do something that's like more positive and more like what I really wanted to do, things where I could kind of create things from scratch rather than kind of showing up and shooting what existed already and creating the story a little bit more. And when I started shooting, I lived in California, and I think that sort of in and of itself started to define a style because of what I had access to, which was amazing locations, the ability to shoot outside all year round, but less of a fashion industry to really be able to work with. So it just naturally became really lifestyle-y. And I think I got kind of put into a box of, she's a girl, she's from California, so she does happy, bubbly lifestyle. And so that's what I did. And it kept feeling really forced. And I felt like I kept trying to like maybe do what other people were doing. And every time I did it, I was like, this doesn't even really feel like me. And finally, I worked with an editor that was like, you might not be a lifestyle photographer. And I mean, I still consider myself, I still think I slant lifestyle, but I think I wasn't as lifestyle-y as I kind of was doing. And so, but when she said that to me, I was like, no, but that's how I make my living, is happy and fresh and accessible. And so I was like, that was like a really scary thing to hear. And then I started letting myself take a lot more chances and stop doing things just to make, just so it would be, you know, filling what it was that people expected that I should be doing, like the happy, cute California stuff. And gave myself a little bit more leeway, because at that point I was already making a living. So I didn't feel all the pressure to be like, oh my God, I need to make this work so I can get hired, so I can pay my rent. It was more like, okay, well, I'm already doing that now. So now now I have a little bit more freedom to breathe and take chances and do some more interesting work, and have some more failures. And so it's still evolving. Like, I think that even in this year, I've made a big leap of where my work is going, and it has like more fashion, kind of richer, more experimental look about it.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll bring some of it up real quick. Just to show people some of the work. Yeah, you can definitely see how there's a little bit of lifestyle, but there's also that fashion edge in there too, and the dark, the moodiness from the lighting.
And I think it's like funny, because to me, I'm like, oh, it's so much more fashion. But I think that to someone who's like really hardcore fashion, it still seems kind of soft and lifestyle-y. So I think it's like, it's sort of in the eyes of the beholder as well, like how we define it.
I'll probably just do this, just to kind of scroll through.
And this is like a bit of an older story, but to me, it still feels very me.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So we will, I guess, jump into.
Okay. Cool.
Your speak now.
So, well, can I start by? Okay. No, I'll start by talking. Okay. So, something I wanted to start with is just the very basics of like how we choose our subject matter. Like, where do you start? You know, because as photographers, we're kind of like sitting here with a blank slate of like, you could choose to shoot anything. And, you know, I see a lot of people that are beginning their career come, you know, that I work with, or that I come and intern for me. And I feel like sometimes there's this feeling of like, well, I need to make money, so I'm going to shoot these commercial things. And I'm like, or someone that's like, I really want to shoot fashion. And then I spend a month with them and I'm like, they don't care about fashion. They don't even like fashion, and they don't know anything about fashion. And so then I'll say like, well, why do you want to shoot fashion? And it's like, maybe this preconceived idea, but what they're actually really passionate about is like rock climbing. And then it's like really obvious, like why try to put yourself in a box and shoot fashion? Why not go shoot adventure sports or rock climbing or whatever? So I think it's like, that's the first, like, it seems so obvious from an outside perspective, but I think when you're in it, you have to really be honest with yourself about, you know, what do I love and what do I care about? And that to me is the only thing you should be shooting. Like, don't shoot stuff because it's maybe going to get you some e-com work. Don't shoot stuff because your friend does it and he makes $500,000 a year. You know, like, you can't do work. You can't do good work if it's not what you're passionate about. So to me, that's like your first order of business. Just shoot what you're passionate about. You know, I think the other thing, you know, when I think about even beginning to conceive of a story, you know, when I look at the stories that are most successful that I shoot, they're the stories that have the strongest idea. And it's the strongest concept, the most pulled together idea, but also the idea that like maybe wasn't the easiest, or maybe was, you know, challenging in some way to actually make it happen, or basically like the the choice ahead of the shoot needs to be a really strong choice. So everything, when you're like thinking about the shoot, sometimes I'll even be like, I really want to do something like a personal shoot 2 weeks from now. And then I'll be like, well, I could really use some beauty work, and what would be really easy. And then I throw together something, and then I hate it afterwards. And I'm like, well, why did I hate it? Because I didn't have a concept. Like, it was like, let's bring some pretty girls to the beach and shoot photos of them. And then it's like the most flat, boring photos possible. Whereas if I take something and I'm like, okay, it's about, it's about these 5 girls, and this is something we just shot recently, but like, it's about these 5 girls, and they're like in this badass bicycle gang, and it's Brooklyn, but it's inspired by Spike Lee and his Brooklyn. And, you put all the things together, and then you're like, well, now I get the story, and now I love the story before I even shot it. And it's like the choice was strong before you even took the photo. So sometimes there are shoots where I know it's going to be a win ahead of time because I made strong choices going into it. And it's something, the idea of strong choices, it's funny because my brother is sitting here, and he is an actor. And a lot of the things that I think about as a photographer are things that he talks about as an actor. And a big part of it is like, before you get on stage, you make that strong choice, and you do all the prep work, and you are 1,000% ready before you walk onto stage, and then you surrender and you let it happen. And to me, that's what you do as a photographer. Like, you put it all in place, and you make the strong choices, and you figure out all the stuff, and then you show up and you like let it unfold in a beautiful way. So that's
real quick, is there a example of something that you think is strong that people can kind of look at and grasp?
I wish I had that. I wish I had the recent one that we just shot, but if we go to my website, it will remind me of something.
Okay, cool. All right, so there we go. Okay.
And if you just go to stories, I'll see like the kind of group of what's there. Oh yeah, the one, Sleepwalk with Me, you can click on.
Okay.
And just like, so whoever's watching this, whoever you're like, the group that you're seeing are all people that work with me on a regular basis. Like, Dylan was on that shoot, and he's my regular photo assistant, and Matt does image management for me. And so we all have we all have been really involved in these shoots, and like know that the way they came to be. So the concept of this was like, basically this woman who is sleepwalking through life. And it's really about like not really being fully present, or not really being awake enough to like experience what's in front of you. So that was basically the idea. And then what that did was make it so I knew what she should be doing in all the shots. Like, I never showed up and was like, I don't know, like, she's wearing a dress, she looks hot, maybe I'll have her stand in front of the camera. Like, you kind of run out of ideas when you have no concept. But then once I knew the purpose for it, I knew what she should be doing in all of the shots, and it made sense, and it felt like it held together as a story. And then even the locations were, it's not like we showed up and just walked around and found some locations. Like, they were fully scouted, except for the Chinese food restaurant, which I like drove by in the van and was like, stop, which is actually my favorite shot. So it's a lot about, to me, like, you make all the choices, you find the amazing locations. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And then you see other stuff along the way, but you've put all the pieces in place.
Right. And I think like you were saying earlier, having that letting go and letting the, kind of photography take over and just being a part of it is akin to doing something like that, where you got that shot because you just let it happen.
Yeah.
Rather than like focusing to like, no, we have to get to this next location before the light goes. You let it organically be like, I really want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So we stopped and we did it. And like you said, it's your favorite shot. So
Yeah.
it's a good process for sure.
I agree. And then, well, that sort of makes me think of like something I was going to talk about later, but it's really, well, okay, I'll stay on track. We'll get back to that. So I think it's also a lot about having a strong point of view. So I really feel like, you know, with any artistic thing, like whether you're an actor or a painter or a singer, like it's not interesting if you don't have a point of view. Like, I want to know what you think. Like, I want to know what you think about a woman who's sleepwalking through life. Like, what does that make you feel? And, you know, what are you saying? And to me, you have to say something with your work, whether it's just like a little something, you know, it doesn't have to be a massive political commentary of some sort, but you have to know why you're taking those pictures. Like, they have to have a purpose of some sort. So it all goes back to like, shoot what you care about and that's all you can do. Okay, so the second point that I wanted to talk about is being open to criticism, but also remaining true to your own vision. And I think that that's something I've had to like figure out along the way, because I think that it's really good to get feedback to a certain extent. And I think that, you know, if you get to the point where you're asking every single person you know for feedback about your work, you're going to have 20 different opinions. They're going to make you feel crazy, and your work is going to get watered down because, like, you know, maybe that person doesn't know anything about photography or the type of photography that you want to work in, or about fashion, or about anything, but they've now offered something about your work. And now you're like kind of holding on to it. And especially as artists, we hold on to criticisms as much as we try not to, but that one thing that someone's like, I hate the blah, blah, blah about that shot. And then it will, like, if you let it, it will resonate with you. And I think that that's a really risky thing for a photographer to do, is to ask so many people for opinions that you're starting to get to a lowest common denominator by the end. But I think it's good to have trusted people around you that know your work, know what you're trying to get toward, what you're working towards, what your vision is and where you're trying to go, and limit your feedback to those people. Like, only ask that group of people that you've decided are your trusted confidants in some way and understand this world, and get your feedback from them. Don't ask your mom, don't ask your neighbor, because they come to things from their own points of view, and that can really like mess with your head. So the other thing I think is to not be too sensitive to criticism, and not to let it like stop you in your tracks and throw you off course in some way. Because if you are following your true vision and shooting what you care about, and then someone says something, two people say something, and you start to doubt it, maybe because you know where you're going, you just haven't gotten there yet. Like, maybe you're shooting some work and you're like, I know it's not quite there, but I know if I keep massaging it, it's going to get here. But this person that's giving you the criticism only sees here. And so if you let their criticism stop you, then you can't reach that point where you know you're trying to go, and you're the only one that knows you can get there. So just be really careful about getting too attached to criticism.
So on that note, I mean, it could be difficult, I think, when you're even on a shoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're having the people that you're actually working with,
mm-hmm.
and people whose input are kind of necessary
mm-hmm.
to the shoot, right?
Yeah.
But say, especially for the personal projects, you have someone that kind of wants something, but you're not really sure how it would work, or you're not really confident, or maybe not confident, but you don't want to waste your effort on that because
mm-hmm.
you have something else you're working on in your head. What's a good way to like kind of please them and then also please yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. And like, I think Dylan asks this because we run into this all the time where we're like in a flow and something's going well. And the art director is like, well, what about if we do this? And you're like, that doesn't even technically make sense. And that's not even like physically possible. So I think that it's like a little bit of like a dance of like, how do you answer that question without shutting someone down a lot of times? And you want to make sure the art director feels heard and respected. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, you know, yeah, we can do like, maybe that won't work because the ceilings aren't high enough. But what we could try is this other thing that I think could maybe solve the problem in the same way. So I think it's like different too when you're on shoots and like there's a very specific commercial destination that you have to get to. Like then it's less about like, do I think it's cool to like shoot someone on a bike like laying down on the floor? Like maybe not, but that's what this job calls for. So then you have to like think about, well, how do I do it at least within my voice, within these confines? And I think it's just about like, I try to, when I'm shooting, think about like, how can I make this a shot that I'm proud of, that I'm like, maybe it's not my original idea, maybe it's not my concept, but how can I at least make it something that I would put in my book potentially, or still looks like it's within my voice. And I just think it's like, there's delicate ways to kind of do what you think is the best idea, but not make someone else feel like shut out of something. And then I think that there's sometimes you have to like walk down their path to make them feel heard, even though you know it's a crazy idea, and not be a jerk about it. Like you can't just be like, do it and then be like, is this what you want? Because then no one really appreciates that kind of behavior either. So it's a dance a little bit. When it's your own personal project, it's different.
Right.
But when it's a client, it's like, once you have a client involved and they have to have something a certain way, maybe they're selling a product and they need to see it a certain way, you can't, like, it's not all about your personal voice and what you want it to be. So it's the marrying of the voices, I think. Okay. So I also want to talk about how to work without fear. And I guess actually, let me ask you guys this, like, when you're going into a photo shoot, like, do you walk in with like fears ahead of time? Like, do you feel that you're shooting without fear?
Show of hands, anybody in the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, if it's new person, maybe, yeah, I feel a little fear. Yeah, actually. Yeah. And depending on what kind of work it is. If it's something that I'm really into it, because I know how to do, I've been doing a lot of time, so maybe I'm much more comfortable, confident. But if it's something kind of new, yeah, I feel a lot of ancient fear, like, oh, so it should be. So a lot of doubt start pop up in my mind, even if I'm doing, so my mind trying to complicate the situation, even if it's, it's happened.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that happens a lot. Like, I think that when you head into a shoot, you can kind of like start to spin in your head a little bit about, you know, what's going to happen and what about if this happens or this happens, or maybe if it's a personal shoot, sometimes like the day before I'll be like, this is a bad idea. This is dumb. This has been done before. Or like I'll just start to go down that path. And something that I've learned that I think is really helpful, and I hope that you guys won't think it sounds hokey, but is to have a mantra and to like say it to yourself as many times as you need. Sometimes I'll say it like on my way to the shoot. I'm like, I am a creative, artistic person, and they hired me because they think I'm the best person for this job and they want to hear my opinions. And I'll like, maybe my mantra won't be that long all the time, but it might be an element of that depending on what the day is. I'll just make it up at that moment. And I'll tell myself that over and over again, or like, I deserve to be here, or I'm the captain of this ship, whatever it is, because I think that constant like affirmation really gets you into a place of like presence and confidence. And I think that if you're not present and confident and like being the driver of the ship, the whole shoot falls apart. And it needs to be like, I think when you feel confident, you make other people feel confident and relaxed, and you make them feel like they can have fun and have an easy time at the shoot, and then everything changes. So I think that like trying to be as fearless as possible is not about like getting in and being a bulldog and like acting like an asshole to your assistants or something. It's like, hey, we're here. We know what we're doing. We're excited about it. And we all are the best at our jobs. So now we just have to do it. So try to have a mantra. When you have fears going into a shoot, try to also think about like, and counteract the fears with goals. So if you're like, oh, I'm afraid that the models are going to be late and then we're not going to be able to start right away. And then the light's going to go down really early and I'm not going to get the last 2 shots. Then, okay, well, that's really simple. So what do you have to do? You have to like, you know, give the model a fake call time, or make sure that someone goes and picks them up in an Uber, or stress to the agent that they really need to get there at that time. Like, that's simple. But whatever the fear is, like, I fear I'm not going to be able to like communicate my ideas to the model. Okay, well then what do you need to do? You need to like write down the ideas ahead of time so you know how to communicate it to them. So just take the fear and turn it into a goal. Okay, and then also be aware of fearful shooting patterns. And what I mean by this is, I think that photographers tend to have a default. So like when we get into a situation and we're like, oh, I don't really know what to do right now. You know, the model's not great or the light's not great or whatever. And then you do your default picture. And like, we all have the default picture. Like when you look through your own work, you're like, oh, I've taken that picture like 25 times. And for me, it was like, when my editor pointed it out, it was like a portrait of someone standing in the middle of the frame, looking dead into the camera. And that was like, and it was an easy go-to because that's an easy shot. And it's like, you have great clothes, you have a great model. You don't have to, I didn't have to do anything to make that picture. The picture just made itself. So she was like, that's fine. I get why you like that photo, but I don't need to see it 4 million times in your book. I already know you can take that picture. So it was like a good kind of like thing for me to know when I run out of things and I run out of ideas, I keep doing the same thing. So if you find that you're continuing to repeat the same patterns over and over again, know that and like call yourself out on it and be like, that's coming out of fear because I'm afraid to take a chance on a different picture. So, and okay, so okay, so the other thing is how to take chances and welcome failures. So I think that like mistakes are our biggest teachers. And one thing I really like to do is after a shoot, I write down what I think I wished I would have done differently. Like I wished I would have prepared this a little more, or I wished that, you know, I would have done this other thing a little bit differently so that I can kind of get into my head, you know, okay, that's done. I'm not going to beat myself up about it for the next month or worry about it next time I go into a shoot. I already learned that, you know, I needed to communicate with the model differently or whatever it was that you feel you should have done differently. Or I needed to like tell the stylist, I hate that outfit or I hate that hat. And then the hat will torture you for the rest of the time you have to look at it. Like, I would just remember to write myself a note, like, tell the stylist when you hate stuff. It's really obvious, but when there's 6 million people around and a lot of people asking you questions, sometimes you forget that you need to also be the one to tell the stylist that you hate the hat. So tell the stylist you hate the hat. Okay. And then I think getting back to finding your style, I think that you can't try to decide on a style and then go out and do it. I think you kind of have to let it occur naturally. So I think this comes from like when you choose your subject and you choose what you're passionate about, and then you just shoot, you just start to move and let it happen organically, the style just starts to happen. And it happens in ways that you maybe didn't expect. Like I thought I was going to be documentary, and then I continued to not be. And I was like, well, then, okay, I guess that's happening. And then work started to get more fashiony, and then, okay, I guess that's happening. Not to say that you don't make really conscious decisions along the way, but I think that you just also can't control it so much, because then it looks inauthentic. Like I think all the decisions along the way have to be authentic decisions. Okay, and the other thing is where you draw your inspiration from. Because I think that it's important to not just look at other photographers, because then you run the risk of just doing what other photographers do, and then you haven't developed your own style. So I'd rather hear like you love comic books and you go to Comic-Con every year. And like you love to watch Vikings on TV.
I think that sounds like somebody here.
You know, like to me, that's interesting, because that tells me who you are. And then I'm like, well, if you're out shooting, you know, hot girls in scantily clad lingerie, like that doesn't make any sense. So if I know like what you're passionate about, then why are you not drawing your inspiration about what you're shooting from what you're passionate about? So it can be like, I'd much rather a photographer be looking at film, music, art, you know, everyday life, their friends, sports, like whatever it is that they love and they care about, that's what I want you to be looking at. Don't go trolling Instagram for 600 hours. Oh, look, this person's better than me. This person's also better than me. And they did that. And I should do something like that. That will just make you crazy. And you'll like end up just being a carbon copy of 3 photographers put together. So get your inspiration from all the bigger ideas and as little as possible from other photographers. Not to say don't study photo history and don't know what's out there, because yes, you should know what's out there, but don't get so attached to it. Okay, and then surround yourself with supportive and positive collaborators. So, well, on either side of me are 2 of my supportive and positive collaborators. And I think about this a lot when I'm shooting, because I really do think about that thing of like, put everything in place, do all the work ahead of time, and then show up and have fun. But part of the reason I can show up and have fun is because like he's worrying about like, is the pack firing? Is the light doing what it's supposed to do? Are the shots in focus? You know, like it's other people that are responding to me and saying like, hey, Sarah, this. Hey, Sarah, this is going on. This is going on. So I don't have to be the one to worry about every single detail, so that I can just show up and surrender and let go and work with the model and think about the angles and think about the ideas and think about all the fun stuff. You know, if you're thinking about like, oh, did I change my f-stop, or did I change my this, or oh, I just realized the light went up 2 stops, but I haven't even like thought about that. Like Dylan literally grabs my camera and just changes it depending on what the light is doing, because I'm talking to the model and I'm like interacting and I'm having like a rapport. I'm not thinking about all the technical parts. So I think that in order to like really shoot from your heart and really like, you know, be in the moment, you need to have strong people around you. So there's that. And then the last piece of this, and then I want to hear from you guys, is remaining authentic and focused on the shoot day. So I'm like a big proponent of meditation, and I'm not going to like spend 8 million years talking about it, but I think that there's so much going on a shoot day that if you show up and you're like spinny in your head and there's like 8 million people asking you questions, then it's just going to be a disaster. But if you've already calmed your brain and you can see the forest through the trees, which is what meditation really helps with, then you can get to the shoot and be like, okay, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, this isn't working and I know why. Because if you look at something and you're like, this isn't working and I don't know why and I'm getting pissed because I can't fix it, that's really hard. So you need to be able to have a million distractions, look at the shot and know why it's not working and how to correct it. And I really think that meditation helps you get to that place of clarity. So, and the one more last part is I also think that the people that you're shooting should feel very taken care of, because then they'll give you their best and they'll feel safe and happy and excited to be a part of things. And then when you ask, like, to me, I really always want to get people in their most authentic moments. And you're like kind of challenging people, because models want to show up and like be pretty, but I want them to show up and like be themselves or like be a real person. And that's what they've trained themselves not to do. And so if they feel safe and they feel like they get me and they get what I'm trying to do, and I ask them to do something crazy, then they're going to be a lot more likely to like want to play if they feel safe and they feel, and I think they feel that from our whole team.
Yeah.
Like we have a fun time, everyone's super respectful. And I think that creating that safety zone is really important. So that's what I have to say. But I guess I want to ask you guys, like, what are concerns that have come up for you in trying to find your own voice or deciding what it is that you should be shooting? Because I know when I ask people that are more in the beginning of their career, like, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I'm kind of trying to figure that out. Like, what has been challenging about figuring that out, or once you figured it out, how to find your own personal way within that?
Cool. If somebody wants to come around and grab there, if you want, just to get closer. Anybody?
Hi, thank you. It was very, very lovely to hear from you. I wanted to ask that you spoke about the stories that you get inspired with, and different histories or whatever you get inspired with. I wanted to ask if you only keep it in your head and you come up to the shoot and you have this visual idea in your mind, but it's not physically present, or do you actually create some mood boards that you communicate with your team and you explain to everybody? So how does this process of putting your thoughts into the action happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am like pretty nerdy about creating like really detailed shoot decks. So I'll have like a 10-page shoot deck that will be like, it starts with like a verbal description of the concept. And then it has like the next page is usually like maybe the styling concept. And then maybe it's like some photo inspiration that may be taken. I'm a little always like hesitant about putting too much photo inspiration in, because I think then the team copies it without meaning to copy it. So I'll try to put like at least a very hodgepodgey idea together that couldn't, so no one gets attached to one specific thing, or like I'll take stills from a movie or something like that. And then I'll usually maybe choose some like lighting inspiration, because I do think with lighting inspiration, at least like to communicate simply in the morning, to be like, here's what I want to do, is a lot easier than verbally being like, I kind of want it to be hard light, but not too hard, like with a shadow under the chin, but like hard and a little soft. It's like, that's really confusing to interpret.
Right. I mean, it's also a good place for us to start.
Yeah.
And then it's all about finesse, and we usually change it to better suit what you need and what you really ultimately want. So
yeah,
it definitely helps to start.
Yeah, or even like ahead of time, knowing we kind of determine the lighting direction because we need to know the equipment that we have to have there, just as like a simple logistics question. So yeah, the shoot deck is like really kind of like my thing that I count on. And then I will try to share, like anyone working on it already knows the idea before we've gone into it, because they probably collaborated with me on the idea, because I might have a fashion concept in mind, but then I talk to the stylist and she's like, well, that's great in theory, but like realistically, this is what I can pull because of the seasons or the availabilities or whatever. And then the hair person might be like, that's great, but this person's hair doesn't do that. So how about this? So it always gets massaged. So usually we've like discussed it along the way, and then the shoot deck usually gets modified probably 10 times before it is final, before the shoot happens. And then once we get there, I will often use it to talk to the models about like, here's the idea, and here's kind of what I'm going for. And sometimes I'll tell the models, here's what I'm going for, just to kind of get them in the mood and get them understanding what the vibe is. And oftentimes I'm not even hoping that the end result, someone could exactly put their finger on what my story concept was, but I want it to be enough there that it feels like an inkling in their mind. Like for instance, I was just talking yesterday about this story that, and this I didn't exactly spell out in the shoot deck because I thought it was a little crazy, but I was like, it's these girls and they're part of a kind of like nature cult, and they're like worshiping their thing, and they're like having this dance that's just to celebrate their like ideas about, you know, whatever. And it was this whole like cult concept. But I was like, I don't think I need to share this with everyone because it sounds insane. And I, you know, but then it like inspired the shots because I was like, well, if they're like holding hands and dancing because of like the moon, you know, then it made the shot make sense for me. So I guess I did tell those girls that they were part of a cult. Because also like if they can think it's sort of funny and it kind of lightens the mood and they'll be more down to like try things. So yeah, it's all, but then sometimes there's like, it's like the shoot deck is one thing, and then I might have this whole, like another like inner dialogue that's happening also. That's like a little set of information that I haven't like exactly remembered to tell everyone else. So it's usually like a bit of both.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Or I'd love to hear like your own personal experiences with your like defining your own style or challenges.
All right. I think when you go to shoot, I think what you said earlier about taking inspiration from anything but other people's photography is really important, because when I first moved here, I was like, I'm gonna go shoot something, and the first thing came out horrible. It was just awful. And you were like, you know, don't shoot straight on, and try and really take some chances and take some inspiration from something else. And looking at all of your work and seeing when you like read books and base stuff off that, or, you know, based off movies, it comes a lot stronger. And I based my last shoot off of a movie, and it was 300 times stronger than anything I've shot previously. And I think that's really important when you bring really, really new and fresh ideas to the table from something that you would have never really thought to collaborate with before. So I think, you know, when you listen to music, always think about how can I change this into a photograph? Or when I watch a movie, like, I really like that scene, but why did you like that? And could that be changed into something that you want to photograph?
Yeah. Like, so Matt was doing a story recently, and he was like, what was the movie again? Boys of Summer. Not Boys of Summer.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
No.
It was like Kings of Summer.
Kings of Summer. So he was like, did you ever see Kings of Summer? I'm like, yeah, I love that movie. It's amazing. And so then the night before the shoot, I was like, watch the movie before you go shoot, because to me, like, I always will like watch, like, I'm shooting a basketball inspired fashion story on Sunday. So I've been like watching basketball movies and basketball documentaries, and, or even if I'm like working on this screen, I'll put like a basketball something on over here. Or like I went and there's like a million basketball courts around me, and I go and like watch the guys play basketball because I want to see like what are the interactions and what are they wearing, and like not even like what are the actual technical moves, but like how do they like kind of like shit talk on the courts, and like what happens, like what about the guys watching, what happens there. So I'll go and like study people's body languages because I want the body language to feel real. And like when Matt was going to shoot this story the other day, well, first of all, there's a few things. One, he was going to light it, and then it was shooting outside, and I was kind of like, well, why complicate the idea right now? Like, you don't have a huge team supporting you with lighting, so why not just focus on like great composition, great mood, great interaction with the model? Don't haul around a bunch of lights. It's gonna complicate the whole deal. And then also like watch the movie the night before, even though he'd seen the movie before, like basically get it in your head and get like, what was it that you liked about the idea? And it was like the freedom of like these boys and like a very like boyish energy that like, it was a like true kind of coming of age story.
Yeah.
So I think like getting yourself in the mood for the shoot also is kind of important. Like I notice that I'll dress according to what the shoot is a lot of times. Like I'll be in the mood of the shoot so much that I realize I've like styled myself in accordance with what the idea is that day. So you should start to like really feel it in your core before you go into a shoot. And listen, I know that like not every shoot is like this. When you go into like an e-com shoot or something and you do like 100 shots a day of like a model that is like miserable being there, like it's not the same thing. And I think that it's just never going to be the same thing. Like that is its own deal. It's a way to have an income, but like shoot stuff that you're passionate about so you can continue to shoot stuff that you're passionate about. Does anyone have work that they want to look at?
So I think we have a couple left.
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll let Loretta go first, I guess.
Okay.
Let's screenshot real quick. Which the new portfolio, as we found out today, is actually Instagram.
So is there a reason that you guys don't have websites?
No, you can go in the website. I guess it's more clean.
Well, I'm not challenging. I'm just curious.
It's fine.
Well, we'll leave it here. This is good.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just go through this way. Just kind of, anything you want to jump in and make a comment about, feel free.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just stories. These are stories that I shot years ago. I mean, sometimes in Instagram, I refresh when I don't have something new. I refresh them, and this is the main portrait.
Oh, that's nice.
And because I'm doing a portrait project about artist and creative,
so cool.
He's a dancer. I've been shooting also musician, DJs, and other. So in my Instagram, there is a mix of editorial stuff that I like shooting and portrait. This is that's one I shot this winter. Cute. I guess. Yep.
Yeah.
Anything
so so I guess is this like, my question for you is, do you feel at this point like you're still developing the style of what you're doing, or?
Yeah, I'm still developing. I feel that I'm more closer to the real myself now. You know, I used to be more random, like just shoot. Especially when it's matter of portrait, I'm really now focused. I know what I like, and also for fashion editorial that I shoot, but just for myself, for try to be published for me, for all the team that we work together. I'm getting, I think, closer to. But sometimes I'm like, I mean, I don't have a strong team. For example, I don't have assistant. I always do everything myself.
Yeah.
Tech assistant and lighting assistant when when I shot in studio, but mostly it's things outside. So I rely only on available light. The same things that you just said. I can carry lighting and thinking about lighting, especially in your city. If you put a stand, they bother you. So I can do. So in this case, I'll just use available light because it's easier, and then I have But basically, what I miss it's I guess a team that can help me to develop more what I really would like to do, because I would like to do shooting outside by using also strobe lights. So I would like to have somebody else at least to hold the strobe in the right way. But yeah, I think that little by little I'm getting there, especially for portrait. I think that in fashion I need more, I don't know, more advice, more.
I mean, I think something, you know, especially with fashion, it's like what I want to, like, what I think you could be thinking about is what am I trying to say with this photo? And, you know, I think it's also like fashion a lot of times, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but it's like sexy girls, not enough clothes, like the whole deal. And it's a really hard thing to like walk that line and like know why you're walking that line. You know, like
between the sensual and trash, like there's a
yeah,
very thin line, and people cross it
hard.
all too often. Yeah,
it's hard. I mean, I've crossed it, and I've been called out on it by like even my editor that was like, that is no, like that's not great. And you know, I think a lot about now about how I want to portray women, and you know, I love to portray them as these like strong, confident people that are maybe like vulnerable at times, that are like have a range of emotions, that they're not just like hangers, and they're not just like a nice pair of tits, basically. Like, I mean, and I feel like that's really, really important, because when we're shooting fashion and we're shooting women, like we're saying something. And we're always saying something in the way that we portray people. So I think that when you shoot, you need to be able to say, this is why I shot her like this. Like, I loved that photo with the big shadow on the wall. And I liked it because it had like subtleties. And I loved that the light had like a subtle, well, the light wasn't really subtle. It was pretty like bold, but, you know, that picture really stood out to me because no, it was like way further down. Because I'm like interested. Yeah.
Left.
So one more.
Down. Left.
Yeah.
All right.
Because like I'm interested in the shadow, and like she's so tough, and she's so like kind of like a little bit of badass. And like, again, this is just what I'm drawn to. But like, to me, I like this better than like a girl with her shirt open and just enough to like see some stuff going on. Cause I feel like that's just like, we already got that, you know, but this is like, she's strong. Her mood is strong. To me, this like says something about like, you're seeing her as a person and as a human. And like, that's when I feel like it gets interesting, is like, you know, when you're actually shooting the real person, not shooting like a representation of the person. That reminds me of, I did a lot of work with an editor, and she basically spent like 2 days interviewing me about like, what was your grandmother like? What was your mom like as a little girl? Like, what do you like to do for fun? She asked me like the most intimate questions. And then in the end, she kind of helped me boil down, like, what are my key attributes? Like, what makes me the most me? And she kind of described it as like, that we are like these pyramids, and as photographers, and at the base of the pyramid, we all have the same base. She's like, you're all collaborative because you have to be collaborative. You're all like a little bit introverted because maybe that's why you chose to be photographers. You know, there's certain, you have a base technical level. We're all technical. We can all figure out how to use a camera and Photoshop and blah, blah, blah. Like without those things, you're not even a photographer. Like you can't do the job. But then at the tip of the pyramid is like those three little things that make you you and make you actually have your style. So, you know, and basically what's at the tip of your pyramid can be ever changing, but mine hasn't really changed that much over time. But just like when we boiled mine down, my three attributes were world of exploration. And then she describes it, and there's a lot of words within that, but it went back to like, you know, the fact that like we took a lot of family road trips and we would like go to a new town and walk around, and, you know, it was all about like exploring something new or learning and finding stuff out. And then my other attributes are picture perfect. And every attribute has a shadow side and a light side. So it's like picture perfect has a lot of positives, but it also has the negatives like inauthentic and false or secretive. And so you try to stay on like the light sides of your attributes. And my third one was youthful. And one of the things we looked at in my work was like when I had a great photo, I was hitting all three of those attributes. And when I had a photo that fell flat, I was hitting one of those attributes. So if I was only hitting youthful, it was like, I don't really care about that photo. But when it was like youthful and world of exploration, then it was like getting a little bit more interesting. So if you can kind of start to figure out like, what is it about you that's unique? You know, what is it that's so specific to you that you're the only one that could have taken the picture that way? So, you know, and that's a hard thing to figure out. Like I had the help of an expert that had done this with like 100 other photographers, and she has a system that she uses. But it really helped me to figure out when I was hitting all the notes to actually make it like, what is a Sarah photograph? And it's funny because sometimes people are like, oh, that's such a Sarah photo. And I'm like, no, that's not a Sarah photo. That's what you think is a Sarah photo, but that's not a Sarah photo because there's so much more. That's like the trite version of a Sarah photo. But like the real version has all of this other stuff happening.
I'd like to get another person, Lisa, if you want to switch mics, Laredo.
Thank you for showing the work. It looks good. Hi.
Sorry, I'm a little cold.
So tell us like about what you've been doing.
I've been photographing for a number of years, and I have done commercial and fine art and stopped the fine art. And in my fine art work, it started off as documentary, but then slowly turned more introverted and more about myself and about always uplifting my subjects. And I find that I photograph women much, much better than men. I've tried male models. Not that I don't love it, but it's never happened. And I recently did a campaign for Cargo Cosmetics, and it really clicked for me this year. Like,
that was just,
yeah, like you should just, beauty is your thing. You love playing with makeup. I love hearing people's stories. I think that's why I love people more than products, because products don't talk to you. You don't get to hear who they are. And I've learned to, even though I do everything myself, I've learned sometimes just let the mistakes happen so I can connect with who I'm shooting, because they get lost. And I want that connection. And I'm trying to, right now, really find my pace and redefine my ideas when I'm shooting. And I like to work in a democratic environment, and sometimes the hair and makeup people try to, nudge their way, and I'm always open to their ideas, but at the end of the day, it is your decision. So it's really having great people around you and also being able to talk to them. In addition to talking to your clients, And so I think I'm on a new path of where I want to go and how I want to do it, with integrating that fine art and the things that get me going, like color. Like I love painting and art, and that self-exploration in the fine art work into the commercial work a little bit more if I can. And celebrating women, all shapes and sizes and ethnicities and everyday people. I'll see someone and say, I love your face, I'm going to shoot you. And people are like, what, are you crazy? I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
That's how it is now. You can't just go with a girl that's stunning. I want the everyday person who I would chase her down and give her my card on the street. You got a great
She's very pretty.
She's great. And I want to hear that story. So that's,
Sarah, if you want to kind of give a couple quick little
yeah.
that's
pieces
where
of
I'm
that.
at now. It's like,
So are you kind of are you now thinking that you want to focus more on beauty?
definitely more, and trying to expand that much more in addition to the fashion work, because fashion and beauty can be the line can be very gray in addition to advertising.
Yeah.
I get that a lot. Oh, it looks like an advertisement. And I'm like, well, that line's been crossed to me. But I love clothes. I love to me, that's, they're another artist. So I'm just trying to, redirect where I'm going to go and the type of clients I want to work with.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that beauty, I mean, I've always been envious of people that could just choose to shoot beauty, because I think it's like so specific that you can really become an expert in just that one thing.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds really cool. And I think, but it's also one of those realms that's hard to put your own personal stamp on.
Sure.
Because even like some of the top beauty photographers, you're kind of like, okay, well, I can't decipher this one from the other 20. So I think with beauty, that's a really, like, you really have to refine what about how you're going to shoot beauty is how you specifically shoot beauty. And, something I think is appealing about beauty is that you're actually close to someone's eyes and their face and their expressions. You're actually physically closer to them most times. And you can get it can be so much about their expression. And there's such a sense of intimacy that you can't always get when it's just, when it's fashion or it's a group or something. So I would really think that you need to think about, like, how am I going to make this my own thing? Because there's people doing like really refined beauty that's really sleek and that works for like Sephora and Smashbox Cosmetics and whatever. And that's like, that's already kind of existing. So I think that there's a whole lot of other realms of beauty that aren't necessarily completely existing yet, that isn't maybe that like overly perfected beauty. I mean, I personally also think that beauty is going in a bit of a different direction right now, that like super hyper retouched, sleek, like automaton robot beauty, I don't think people are going to be interested in for that much longer. So I think a big thing to think about is retouching, and how do you want to work? How do you want to live in that world? Because the beauty retouching, sometimes the retouchers are just as coveted as the photographer, because they're doing half the magic in the second part of things. But if you're going to do, I don't know, I think you kind of have to think about, like, how do you personally feel about that level of retouching, and how much do you want to participate in it? And, how does that change the view? How does that change the feeling of the photos? So I would say, I mean, for both of you guys, rather than like going and being like, I need to go shoot fashion, I need to go shoot beauty, those are just like words, like I wouldn't even do it like that. I would be like, okay, I want to do a story. It's going to be really tight shots. and it's inspired by, you know, the people that I see on the subway every day, and or it's inspired by, like, I don't know, bubble gum. I don't even care what it is, but it needs to be inspired by something. You know, it can't just be like a simple, like, I want to shoot for Sephora, so I'm going to shoot like what I think Sephora wants to see. Because what Sephora is hiring photographers that are aspirational for them. So they're hiring people with books that don't look exactly like them, but they look like the 10 times better version of what Sephora wishes they could be, but they can't because they're appealing to a mass audience. But they're also hiring the photographer that they're like, they look through the book and they're like, holy God, this was for W Magazine. How did you do this? This is incredible. We don't want that, but we want like a dumbed down version of that. I mean, I'm not to say that Sephora is dumbed down in any way at all. Like, they do beautiful stuff, but they're hiring people that are doing even bigger stuff, like, than they're having them do. So I don't think you should think about it as like, let me go shoot something that could look like a Sephora ad. It's like, let me go shoot something that looks like it could go in W or L or Glamour or something like that, that has an editorial slant, that has an editorial point of view, because then those makeup brands will be like, we get how you shoot beauty. And, you know, we understand what your point of view is. And maybe it's not going to be for everyone, but it's going to be for those specific companies that like your personal point of view. Like, maybe what you said about like all shapes and sizes is your point of view. And then maybe the retouching is backed off on, you know, and like the everyday real life person and the stories, that says to me, well, then you want to see people's expressions and you want to see real people and you want to see their hearts in their photographs. Like, you don't want to see like the nothingness behind their eyes. So I think it's, yeah, like, you kind of have to like think about, what does beauty mean to you? And the other thing is, I just did something that my agent had asked me to put together, and I was putting together a beauty portfolio. So, and they were like, so that we know how to sell you, can you write something that is like, what does beauty mean to you? And so I wrote like a 3-paragraph thing about like, this is what beauty is from my perspective. And I just like kind of sat down and wrote it out. And after I wrote it, I was like, oh, I didn't even really know I thought all those things. But I guess I did have a really strong point of view about beauty. And it was like, I don't love heavy-handed retouching, and I like a lot of authenticity, and I like imperfections, and I actually like am obsessed with imperfections. Like, that will be the thing that makes me like a photo, which is funny. Well, Matt hears me talk about it all the time, because I'll be like, I just love that like tiny little scar in her eyebrow right there. And that will be like the thing that makes me love a photo, or like the way the hair is a little fucked up or something. And so what I realize is like, I love the imperfection in, like, to me, that's what makes something beautiful. And so then I started to define, it helped me to write it out. I was able to define to myself, what does beauty mean to me? Not that I've answered it every single time I've gone out to shoot. Like, I might have an idea and then go out and shoot and be like, that wasn't what I meant to do at all. That's not my idea of beauty, but at least I had the goal in mind. So yeah.
Cool. So I think we have time for probably one more question or review session. Or if not, then you could kind of, I guess, sum up what you've talked about today.
5 million times over and over again. Anyone else want to talk besides me?
I just wanted to just agree with you one more time.
Yeah, agree with me one more time, girl.
When I was studying, and they were telling us all these techniques to how to find yourself as well. And you mentioned writing a few times. And I think writing, because we're such visual people, everybody here, I'm sure. But when you write, something else opens up, which is not as visual and obvious to you, maybe. And you write more and more, and free writing helps a lot. Or if somebody asks you, could you, I don't know, like a little essay about a topic, you'll find things that you actually care about more than you thought. So just wanted to thank you to point it out, because I agree with it. I think it's a very good tip to learn more about yourself. and what you like to shoot.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you mentioned that. It makes me think of this book, which you've all probably read, called The Artist's Way. And if you haven't, you should read it or listen to it on tape. And she talks about artist pages, and it's something that like it's exercise in the morning that you kind of just you just dump your brain out onto paper, and it's like a good way of emptying out all the kind of like clutter in your mind, so that you can start to become more clear with your vision of what you want to be doing. So that's sort of a different idea, but I think you can like empty it out and then be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write what I want this shoot to be about. And I think that before you go into a shoot, you should always write what it is about. You should never just be like, I'm going to shoot some pretty dresses. Like, describe it. You don't have to tell anyone, but you should always write down and know in your own being, what is this shoot about? And because especially when you go to sell it or show it or like talk about it with someone, you're never gonna be like, oh, here's just a pretty girl in a pretty dress. It's like there has to be something more.
Well, I think when you write about it too, like when you pitch it, it like also gets the rest of the people excited. The better you write it and the better your description of what you actually want to do is, the more excited everyone else is going to be about it.
Definitely.
So if you can say we're going to do this really cool shoot and there's going to be 5 girls and they're all going to be in a basketball court or like whatever, they're all going to be in a bike gang like you were talking about earlier, that is going to get everyone pumped about it, whether it's like, oh, we shoot 5 models in the city of Brooklyn. Like, they're very two different descriptions. And when you write and pitch to people, I think that really is how you get a good team on board.
True, very true. I think that's like one thing we didn't really talk about, but it is a lot about like, if your idea is strong, that then you can, like, I think about it as steps. Like, I have a strong idea and then maybe I can get a good magazine on board, or I have a strong idea and then I can get a good stylist on board. And then once I have one of those, then I can get a good model. And then I can get all these other good things, but I kind of need to do them in steps. But like, you can't get all the good things until your idea is like fully fleshed out and you have a plan, and you almost like selling your idea to the rest of the team. Like, and then they're also on the same page. You don't want to have them show up and everyone's on a different page of some sort.
Cool. So I think that was awesome. I just want to kind of sum up what you said. Let's see if I try to remember all the awesomeness. So the first one was have passion, really care about what you're shooting, correct? Followed by, hold on, I'm going to come to have a good idea. You just said that one. Yeah. That was one of them. Really plan it out. Don't have fear, right? And then if you do fear something, try to do something to combat that fear. Those are kind of the 4 points that I've took from that. Was there anything else you wanted to add to at the end? Or
I guess just to be open to criticism, but not too open. Welcome failures and try to fail often, because if you're failing, that means you've taken chances in some way. Don't overthink your ideas. Draw inspiration from places other than other photographers. Surround yourself with supportive and positive collaborators, and remain authentic and focused on the day of the shoot.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. This has been super awesome. Everybody else, feel free to watch the replay after this goes off the air. And definitely feel free to check out her website, which is sarahkehoe.com. And then kehoephoto.com. And then her Instagram as well, or in Facebook. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. All right. Thanks, guys.